3
Utakuwa
Reds
unatoka white kwa
qualifying
mkono.
standard.
Wanaitwa majina.
Hawkins twice fourth in the World Championships, not competing here, so Mo Farah, one of the pacemakers. Now to one of the Ethiopians who could potentially put Kipchoge under pressure. Muli Wasihu, 8th on the all-time list with that 2:03 last year. Mozinek Geremu, World Championship silver medalist, 4th fastest in history, 2:05.55. It took a very, very special run to beat him 16 years ago in this race. The greatest of all time. He's been performing at the highest level for 2 decades. World record holder, world champion over the 5,000 back in 2003.
5 people watching.
And he is the Olympic champion. And a multiple Paralympic champion, Dame Tanni Gray-Thompson, is the official starter for the race. She's doing excellent commentary duties for the BBC with the elite men's and women's wheelchair races, which will be the 3rd instalment of drama. It's a triumvirate of excellence here in London this morning. So Bridget Kosgei delivered in the elite women's race. Will it be the same here in blustery, wet conditions in London? Eliud Kipchoge.
Zima hapo. Zima hapo kwa simu. Nimekutoa.
Imerudi,
Ili zime kuna hiyo.
sizime juu imerudi.
Sasa tuonyesha na DSTV. Zima tu kwanza tunaijaribika. Basi acha basi. Umetoa? Unaona kamba ndio hii inaonyesha reflection yake.
Chenye wa text hapa.
Acha tu. Acha. Hakuna namba mingi.
Wanne. Jamani.
Iko hivi.
Eliud.
Nasikika. Kwa hiyo kinini na DSTV ina shida.
Nasta kunini. Sasa kuitoa.
Ukiweka pause.
Haina pause.
Onto Birdcage Walk. I think that's the one we've just seen. Otherwise, not particularly sharp corners, and of course with a lap course, if you stick on the blue line, which you can see there to the right of the group of runners, next to the red banners, if you stick on the blue line, which is the
Oh, kuna mapeseta
shortest
pia
course,
vile.
you will end up running the shortest distance. It was interesting in the women's race that we
Pesetas.
often saw them off the blue line. So let's hope that the men's, their coaches have told them to stick to the blue line religiously. As for the women's race, there are races within races here today. Rob, at the sharp end, it's all about Kipchoge and the other Africans. But many athletes will be trying to get the men's Tokyo Olympic qualifying time of 2:11:30. Some already have it and will be looking to cement their place with their national federations' selection processes.
4:43, so that's, yeah, it's just outside 2:03 pace. So for the leaders, the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, Geremu and Wasihun, who I've seen in there alongside Lemmer, and Tamirat Tola, who was third in Dubai a couple of years ago, just outside 2:04. This is all fairly good. It's a sensible pace that they've requested, Mara. The lead group have asked the pacemakers to take them through in 61. And if we bear in mind, you know, Eliud's time last year was absolutely phenomenal. You know, 2:02. It wasn't quite the world record for Berlin, but I think everybody would acknowledge that London, it is a world record course. Canucci broke the world record in 02, I think, when Turgat was second and Haile was third on his debut in something like 2:06 plus change. The traditional London course is fast, but probably not quite as fast as Berlin, which is why we've seen more world records in Berlin.
Yeah, and of course Paula Radcliffe, broke two world records. Sorry, 2:15:20. You know, this could be the only opportunity that these athletes get to run on such a fast course. So we didn't quite see the world record that we were expecting in the women's race, but the lead pace group has been asked to go out for a finish time of 2:01:30 to 2:02 through halfway in 61. So that is a world record attempt if everything goes to plan. Those three pacemakers at the front there in red vests and black shorts, that's Noah Kipkemboi, Jonathan Korir and Eric Kiptanui, all from Kenya. Of course, the pacemakers are world-class athletes in their own right. You know, running 61 for a half marathon is no mean feat, and they are employed by the race organisers on behalf of the athletes to help them to a good time. We talked about Berlin. Berlin is really regarded as the fastest course in the world. I think have been done on Berlin, but London has been a very fast course. But today we're on a different course because of the pandemic, and therefore course records, London course records will not be set today. If the London course record is set, we can do the official London course record because we're on a different course. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for these athletes to run on a very, very fast course.
And Mara, what would you make of the view that, you know, on the one hand, yes, we have been denied a great head-to-head between Eliud Kipchoge and Kenenisa Bekele, but in terms of focusing on times, it might make things a little simpler because, of course, Eliud Kipchoge has huge respect for everybody against whom he lines up in a major marathon. He's a great student of his sport. I think with Bekele in the race, there might have been an extra couple of percent of Kipchoge's mindset thinking, I actually have to win this race, let alone break the records, whereas no disrespect to Geremu and Wasihun, who could put him under pressure along with one or two others, but maybe it focuses the mind on the times rather, without that huge potential head-to-head duel. You know, they would have been alongside each other at this point. They're not, so Kipchoge can fully focus on perhaps setting a very, very quick.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Kipchoge, you know, to do sub-2, that was effectively a time trial on his own. He had pacemakers around him, but it wasn't really a race, it was a time trial. And he's shown that he can run very fast times by himself. He doesn't need to be pushed by rivals to run fast times. So I don't think Bekele's withdrawal particularly will bother Kipchoge. He's shown us that he can run very fast times. He goes and does it. He doesn't really need that rivalry.
That was Brett Robinson just going through shot there, the Australian, 30th in the World Cross, in that brutal course in Aarhus. And Mo Farah, pacemaking duties over a big group, including Ross Millington and Arne Gabius. Gabius, the German who's been around a while. 4:49 for that mile, so another solid effort. Mara, whilst we have got plenty of time to talk about it, and you have got great expertise as a 10,000 metre runner, Commonwealth medalist, and on the marathons, the right decision by Sir Mo to decide that the marathon is not his prime event and his prime distance, because boy oh boy is he going to have his work cut out against Joshua Cheptegei next year at the Olympic Games if we have one. Were you surprised? Do you see that as the right decision for Mo?
I'm tempted though. I don't know if you can even make that claim. So, if you think of Mo having to defeat athletes like Kipchoge, Geremu, Wasihu and Bekele to win Olympic gold, you just think, that's just not going to happen. He's perhaps more of a track runner, but then, things change as you get older. Sometimes, he's won everything there is to win on the track. So maybe a new challenge the marathon had the appeal of being a new challenge, but he's going back to the track for Tokyo. That is his decision as far as we know now, and we've seen from his performances on the track that he can win in lots of different scenarios. He wins by sitting in and producing that incredible sprint finish at the end. So yeah, I think he possibly missed the track, having switched to the marathon. But Mo Farah today pacing the last of these 4 groups, and they've been given instructions to go through halfway in 65:30 to 65:45, aiming for that Olympic qualifying time of 2:11:30.
Yes, and we will pay close attention to that benchmark. There are 3. The director clearly at some point will focus in on the British battle for domestic glory. There are 3 men who've got that time. Callum Hawkins, who I think is such an exciting prospect, 4th in London and 4th in Doha. Boy, but when he came back to the leaders last year, I thought he was going to win the race. It's absolutely brilliant. So he's pre-selected. So Mo has the qualifying time, but as Mara's just been talking about, he's focusing on the 10,000 next year, should we have an Olympic Games, touch wood. So Johnny Mellor's the other one with the qualification time. After that fabulous 2:10:03 or 2:10:04, it varies depending on which website you look at, when he was 22nd in Seville. But the likes of Chris Thompson will be trying to take him on. We've got all sorts of other great athletes. Watch out as well for Daniel Meucci. The Italians have got a fine history when it comes to marathon running. Galindo Bordem, and then of course Stefano Baldini. Baldini's had a couple of decent finishes here in London. He was 2nd 23 years ago. Such a great major championship performer. What a win that was from him in Athens 2004. So Meucci, yes, won't necessarily be expected to win this race, but watch out for him. He's quite a consistent performer, so there'll be some European pride on the line here. Meanwhile, in this league group, we have the might of the East Africans trying to take on and tame Eliud Kipchoge, who has not been beaten over the marathon distance since his 2nd outing with a not too shabby 2:04:05. He has never in his life run a bad marathon.
Interesting a moment ago, Rob, that we saw some of this lead group take their drinks. It was 10 degrees. It does look like it's stopped raining though. A little bit difficult to see, but so quite chilly. And ordinarily in a race like this, the elite athletes would get their special drinks at every 5k, so 5k, 10k, 15 and so on. So quite early for them to be taking drinks. It's a 2.15k loop around St James's Park, and they have a drink station. There's 1 drink station per lap. So if they want to, they can drink very frequently, but I think we'll see a lot of athletes skipping their drinks on some of the laps, perhaps grabbing a drink every other lap. Of course, they're running clockwise, and on an athletics track, they run anti-clockwise, so a little bit different from track racing. We did see a race in Prague in September, which was, I think it was 16 and a half laps of a just over 1 kilometre loop. So this isn't the first time this format has been used, and of course the London Olympics, last year's Doha World Championships, the London World Championships in 2017 also used a loop course.
It's just about low 203s, so it's pretty much what the elites have asked for in the very, very early stages. Moeen still up with that group. We haven't really spoken too much about the Norwegian, who was the European record holder for quite some time with that 205.48 in Fukuoka. Now fourth on the European list, and a fine cross-country runner. Ran well in the Europeans, in the World Championships last year with 11th over the 10,000 metres. But today is all about that man, front and centre in your picture. The world 5,000 metre champion from 2003, a bronze medalist on the track, a silver medalist on the track, and then arguably, well, I was going to say his crowning moment, becoming Olympic champion, but he might argue the crowning moment was breaking the world record, winning London for the 4th time, or running 1:59.
It's an embarrassment of riches.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. But
yeah.
do you know what? I'm going to stick to my guns on that, Mara. I'm pretty sure I'm correct in the following statistic, in that no, until Kipchoge, I'm fairly sure I'm right in saying no reigning world record holder, male or female, had won the Olympic title, because it's a completely different type of race. And I was so impressed. The 208.5 that he won it in was an irrelevance. I mean, for him, it's almost, it's not a jog, but so far within his comfort range. I just loved the way he bossed that race, and to break that jinx was really incredible. And there was just a beautiful symmetry about the moment in Rio as well. I'll never forget it, because he had the bronze, he had the silver from Athens and Beijing, missed out on a place in the team over the 10,000 in 2012, and then turned his attention to the road. He's never going to take that gold medal away from his mantelpiece. So for me, that's his crowning moment. Would you agree, or would you pick this up too, maybe?
It's an embarrassment of riches to choose from. I mean, saying an Olympic champion and world record holder, that's an example of how he's so consistent. You know, you get phenomenal athletes like Paula Radcliffe, for example, long held the world record but never won the Olympics. Your question, I'm afraid, is challenging my statistical knowledge of the history of the marathon. But I'm thinking Naoko Takahashi won the 2000 Sydney Olympics and also was the first woman ever to break 220. From memory, she broke 220 after winning Sydney.
Well, answers on a postcard with that one.
I'm sure while we're on air, the statisticians and experts out there will tweet us if we've got it wrong.
But no, I mean I just love the fact that he's got the capability to race intelligently as well as to follow pacemakers and run fast times. And speaking of pacemakers, 4-time Olympic champion, doesn't come much better than that in terms of Mo Farah.
And accompanying him, they're wearing pace 8:13:57 last year in Berlin. So pretty useful marathon runner in his own right. Of course, we said earlier that the pacemakers are here to do a job. Typically, they'll go to halfway, sometimes to 25k. They'll have been given instructions from the organisers, who will have spoken to all the athletes and their agents. And there's several groups. So the top group we saw earlier aiming for 201.30 to 202. The second group aiming for 204. The third group 208 to 208.30. And the final group, this group, aiming for 211 to 211.30 for that Olympic qualification.
Yeah,
time.
and they've, just to clarify the times there, Mara, that group that we're watching went through in around about 15:40, which is sort of high 212s. I mean, it's such a long way to go, but it's a nice steady start for these guys from which they can build heading into the second half of the race, but there is such a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, in these early stages, you don't want to worry too much about the pace. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be much outside your target, but the most would be doing under even splits. You use up energy and fuel and so on, and therefore more likely to hit the wall before the end. So as evenly as possible is what the pacemakers' instructions are. But of course, the pacemakers are only human, and sometimes mistakes happen. But obviously, Mo and Matt very experienced. The third athlete there in the red vest is Shadrach Kimining, who ran 59:27 for a half marathon in January this year in Houston. So also a world-class athlete. We talked earlier about Moen from Norway. Rob, he's a very interesting athlete. If you look down the men's marathon world all-time list, you go through pages and pages and pages of Kenyans and Ethiopians, with a few other East Africans thrown in. But the first non-African you get to is Osako of Japan, and second non-African is Moen from Norway. He made an incredible improvement in 2017, running 2:10:07 in Hanover, and then in Fukuoka in December in 2017, going to 2:05:48. And that 2:05:48 in non-East African running terms really is world class.
Yeah, I remember it being a huge PB at the time. He's the national record holder in Norway over the 10, the half marathon and the marathon. European cross-country on 23 bronze almost 10 years ago. And actually, Moeen ran quite well. We're looking at Eliud Kipchoge, talking about Moeen, the Norwegian, who's there or thereabouts towards the back of that group. Moeen ran quite well. 7th in Valencia last December, low 2:06s. I think that was the closest he'd come to getting back to the Fukuoka form at the end of last year. So we'll keep an eye on that battle for European honours. But this looks metronomic from Eliud Kipchoge. Kipchumba. That was Vincent Kipchumba just behind him. Low 2:05s, won Amsterdam. Huge improvements from him last year, but we're once again focusing on the group looking for Olympic qualification time, which is 2:11:30. Mo Farah glancing over his shoulder. Barrios, the Mexican. Barrios was a fantastic 5,000 metre runner, 5 times the Pan American medalist over the 5,000 and 10,000.
And PB for Barrios of 2:10:55, so he has done the qualification standard, but that was in 2018, which was before the qualification period started. So I think he needs to run that 2:11:30 during the qualification period.
Grice, Nash, Lund, Scott and Martelletti, some of the British contenders. Martelletti's run 2:16 in Berlin.
Josh Lundrob ran 66 minutes at the Antrim half marathon in September, so some good recent form. So these athletes training during a pandemic is a real, but very limited possibility on the road.
I know, and it's funny, isn't it, Mara? You've got to, those guys have been blown out the back of the pace set by the lead group, and yet you've got to remind yourself that you know, the likes of Lund, Nash, Martelletti, they would absolutely wipe the floor at any park run anywhere in the world. They are absolutely brilliant runners,
Yeah.
but they're on a different level to these guys. Right, 5 miles, 23:52. Just having a quick check to confirm who's in that group.
While you're checking that, Rob, it's worth remembering that every man running today is world class. You don't qualify for a race like the London Marathon. You have to be invited to participate. So you have to have the CV of performances to get an invitation from the race. So they may look like also runs compared to people like Kipchoge, but every man starting this race today is world class. It's worth reminding viewers, Rob, that 45,000 recreational runners are out there as we speak, pounding the streets all over the globe. and that includes 10 men who are members of the Ever Presence Club. They are men who have completed every single London Marathon since it started 40 years ago. The youngest is Chris Finnell, who's age 61 now, and they stretch up into the 80s. I think the oldest is Kenneth Jones at age 87. So it started off as a much bigger group and has dwindled, but 10 of them have committed to being out there completing the virtual London Marathon your way, as the marathon have branded it, between midnight and 11:59 p.m. tonight. So very, very good luck to those ever present. May we see 10 of them out next year again, I hope so.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. October the 3rd next year, here's hoping that will be absolutely rammed with family and friends waiting to greet loved ones at the end of the race. If you've ever run it as a club runner or fun runner, it is so hard to find anyone at the end, especially if you go back to the 90s, pre-mobile phone. They used to have, well, you would never have experienced this, Mara, because you're so good. They used to have the avenue of trees, with 26 trees, and they would say, go to the letter that your surname starts with, because if you remember nothing at the end of the marathon, no matter how badly or well the race has gone, you'll always remember what your name is.
Yeah.
But you'd go to the tree, say with mine, it would be the W for Walker, but there would be hundreds and hundreds of people gathered around, and it would take ages to find everyone. Oh, there was a beauty and a simplicity to life before mobile phones. And by the way, just to clarify, on that 5-mile checkpoint, I've got my 2 pace charts here, Ks and miles. We like the miles in old-fashioned money in the British system. 23:52, just outside 2:04. So it's a solid rights of Eliud Kipchoge. Well, we know he's more than capable. 2:01:39, the official world record. Maybe he'll be looking to pick up the pace as we edge towards the halfway stage. But it's they're not ripping up the trees as far as the early pace is concerned. I think this is pretty sensible. Oh, there's Moeen, by the way, just on the back of that group on the left. He's the Norwegian we were talking about. But Kipchoge, Mara, should look comfortable at this pace, and does look comfortable.
Absolutely. I mean, like with Costa in the women's race, this is some 3 to 4 minutes slower than his best. I just wonder if, the men have the benefit of having seen the women not produce a world record, and I just wonder if they may possibly have adjusted their ambitions slightly. It is still raining. I thought it had stopped, but it started again. Meucci there from Italy, we talked about earlier, brilliant championship performer. Hasn't broken 2:10, but he really saves himself for the big occasions. He was the European champion back in 2014. We have to talk about shoes, Rob. Some viewers may have seen Eliud Kipchoge's shoes that he's wearing now in the news earlier in the week. He's wearing a version of the Nike Alpha Fly, and it has 1:59:40 written on the back of it for the benefit of his rivals. So this is the latest version of these shoes with a high stack height, maximum limit of 40 millimeters, and a carbon plate, a curved carbon plate inside, which gives you some energy return. The others appear to be in the Vaporflies, the orange or pink shoes, but Kipchoge is in a version of the Alpha Flies, which I think I'm right in saying he definitely wore for the 1:59:40 attempt.
Yes, I think there may have been minute variations, but it's tantamount to the same shoe. And I guess, for those of you who were watching the elite women's race, we did touch on the shoes, because it is such a massive talking point in the distance running fraternity, and it's a balancing act between gentle increments as technology advances and big steps forward that are out of kilter with that. By the way, so what are we, 29:45? Yeah, so it's they could do with speeding up just a fraction. It's steady by the standards that we're normally used to seeing from Eliud Kipchoge. 30 minutes on the nose for 10k is around about low 206s, so we can expect to see them speed up a little bit, and maybe Kipchoge is just having a word with them there. That was the third pacemaker, Eric Kipchoge. Kipchoge's had a couple of excellent runs in Paris. I think I commentated on him there. I think he's had a 206 or a 207, and maybe Eliud Kipchoge has just said to the pacemakers, listen.
Of this conversation, Rob, looked like he was telling them to slow down, but that certainly looked like he wanted them to speed up, and judging by the splits, I suspect he wants to go a little bit faster.
Well, he certainly earned the right to have a word with the pacemakers, who you would hope would duly respond. Distance running royalty says faster. You say, by how much, sir? I'll start immediately. Look, we can't talk about the shoes all day, but it is worth touching on. One point you've made earlier today, Mara, that I really like is that World Athletics have begun an initiative where any elite athlete must have access to all the shoes that are legally available. Because one of the reasons I fell in love with athletics and with distance running in particular is that it is probably the most accessible sport anywhere in the world. If you're able-bodied, you can run, and the forefront in that regard for decades. And you've got, within the sport, you've got so many different physiques. These giant shot putters, tiny 10,000 metre runners like Haile Gebrselassie weighing 7 or 8 stone. Athletics prides itself on being the most accessible sport in the world, which is why you have so many people from different nationalities. And what I think is very important, whatever your view is with regards to the technology and the speed with which it's encouraging, shall we say, it's so important that at the highest level, it's absolutely a cliche. There are many Africans who come from loving, supportive, providing backgrounds. Not all of them start out with no shoes, but that is the basic principle of our sport, that anybody at any level, no matter how little money they have in their pocket, they should be able to access our sport. So at least from a World Athletics point of view, and it was an amazing athletic endeavour, as you said, it was 2 hours and 25 or 2 hours and 24 seconds, but it was eerily quiet, as is the course today, but such is the demand for safety with regards to the virus that's changed things for so many people, that the organisers had to absolutely ensure that we wouldn't even accidentally have any well-wishers, which is why the hoarding on the inside is so high. They had to be seen to be making sure that no spectators tried to come along. And just to kind of rubber stamp how careful and how responsible the London Marathon organisers have been, everybody that we've seen and everybody that we will see competing here today, they were tested at home 4 days before getting on a plane. They were then tested again at the arrival of the Biosphere Hotel with accompanying grounds of 45 acres or so that athletes could train in safety. I believe they were tested again, or at least had their temperatures taken, on Saturday. They have done absolutely everything they can to ensure that this is a safe, responsible and respectful way for the race to take place. I think it's testament, Mara, to Hugh Brasher's determination. Yes, of course, it was changing throughout the summer and there was a level of uncertainty. He said time and time again, we will do absolutely everything we can to ensure that there is a 40th edition of the Virgin Money London Marathon at some point in 2020. And yes, we haven't got 45,000 people. Yes, okay, we haven't got hundreds of thousands pouring through the streets. But this, at the moment, is as good as it gets. And it's an opportunity for men, women, boys and girls around the world to watch one of sport's most iconic figures and one of the world's most iconic cities. So fair play to Hugh Brasher and everybody else involved, that we're even sitting here watching these images, enjoying this great race unfolding.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, Rob. I mean, we've all had to change our lives completely because of the pandemic. Working from home, not being able to see friends and family like we would normally do. Very, very limited travel opportunities. And how you put on a marathon in the middle of a pandemic is seemingly unanswerable question, but hats off to the London Marathon for doing it. I mean, it's very different, the course is different, the time in the year is different. We're used to seeing this in April, but here we are in October. The format is different, the recreational runners are all running virtually, not here in central London. So they have had to change an awful lot, but hats off to them. And I hope this can be a model to other races, for the rest of this year and next year. This and Tokyo have been the only World Marathon Majors races to take place this year. Tokyo took place back in early March, but that was an elite-only race. That decision came right at the last minute. Of course, that was the beginning of the pandemic, and they cancelled the mass race.
Yes, I believe Bahanu Nagese won Tokyo, just inside 2:05. Gitane Molla won Dubai, 2:03.5. I wonder whether we'll see a time that's quicker than that here today. Do you know, I'm just going back over the times that Kipchoge has run in recent years, and the last race that he won outside 2:03 was, I believe, he ran 2:04.17 when he won London 2 years ago. Last year was 2:02.37. Absolutely incredible race and a wonderful performance from Mosinet Geremu, who stayed with him until so close to the end. 2:02.55 for the fourth fastest time in history. So he's made a habit. If you go through his Berlin wins, 2:04 on the nose, 2:03.32, 2:01.39 obviously for the world record. His London victories, 2:04.42 5 years ago, 2:03.05 in 2016. Remember, he wasn't sure that he was so close to the world record. He was focusing on winning the race against Stanley Biwott. Biwott ran 2:03.51 and was right in contention with Kipchoge until close to the end. It was an incredible race. So it's become, this is how good Kipchoge is. It's become unusual to see him win a race in a time as slow, I use that term lightly, as 2:04.
Yeah, he's just so consistent. 35 years old now, so he's got a few years left. Could he defend his Olympic title next year? Possibly. I think he could lower the world record further. He's done the sub-2, that got fired. I think he could have gone faster. So I think a bit still to come from Kipchoge. Shura Kitata is another interesting one. Well, he pushed Kipchoge all the way, finishing second in 2018. So along with Geremu and Wasihun that we spoke about earlier, he possibly could be somebody, if anybody, who can challenge Kipchoge.
Yeah, that's a very good point from Kitata, actually. And he's only 24. Former world junior record holder when he ran 2:08 and bits. Might have been in Shanghai, actually. The 15K, 44.31. So let's see where that brings us out. Well, 45 minutes would be 2:06. So yeah, it's not going to be as fast, perhaps, as we would normally have expected to see from Eliud Kipchoge. But the Olympic champion and world record holder is certainly looking fairly comfortable at the moment. Lemmer, we touched on him at the beginning, third in Berlin last year. Behind his compatriot Kenenisa Bekele, who ran to within 2 seconds of the official world record, and it was slightly overlooked, that performance from Bekele, because it happened to come so close to Kipchoge's 1:59 and also came during the World Athletics Championships, which was on this time last year. It's hard to believe we were there. 52, it's nuts. It feels like a lifetime ago in some regards, doesn't it? But
I remember preparing to commentate on the men's marathon and having to reprint out the men's all-time list because of the revisions that took place while we were all in Doha. I mean, consistency on Kipchoge, if you look at Bekele, he's not consistent, to be honest. He's dropped out or not started several marathons. He did a good debut in Paris 2:05, but then sort of suddenly out of nowhere nearly breaks the world record. So I think on consistently, certainly with Kipchoge, we know what to expect from him. He's a he's a steady performer, 2:03 or faster. But with Bekele, there's a bit more ups and downs. I mean, that's perfectly normal. We saw in the women's race, you know, some athletes not quite performing at the level that we would expect if you're badly affected by cold and rain. You know, the conditions, the course, build up in the pandemic has been very difficult in some cases for these athletes, not able to train as much as they would like to, or having to train alone for a lot of the time, lack of competition opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? The other element with Kipchoge, and you know, we're going to have another 2 hours, or well, another hour and 25 minutes to talk about it. We've got the elite men's and women's wheelchair races coming up, by the way, in, what is it, around about 2 hours and 10 minutes. Really is an absolute festival of distance running and distance pushing today. The other factor with Kipchoge, Mara, that we haven't talked about, and you're absolutely right with the inconsistency with Kenenisa. He's been beset by injuries since those glorious days where he won so many editions of the World Cross, short course and long course titles. No one's ever done that before, not even Turgat with his 5. But one of the huge advantages, I believe, that Kipchoge's got, as we watch Moeen and Levine's tail the Pacemaker, that's Ruben Kipyego, Patrick Sang, Kipchoge's coach, that is a relationship that has thrived, that they've got a family history, they come from the same area in Kenya. Sang has got a fantastic, gentle, understanding nature, and I think the bond between them and the knowledge that Kipchoge fully appreciates and respects what Sang did on the track. You know, he's an Olympic medalist over the steeplechase. I think that's a huge cog in the Kipchoge wheel that he's got.
Very calm, always appears to be in control, never does anything flashy or rash, and possibly Sang's influence on him has helped him. You know, it's a brilliant demeanour to have for the marathon. You don't want to waste energy early on in the race doing anything silly. You know, you just want to focus on yourself, get the absolute best out of yourself, and not waste energy on anything else. And it's clearly a combination that works very well for him. Just recapping on the weather, Rob. It was 9 degrees when the women set off at 7:15 this morning. The current temperature in London from the BBC website is 11 degrees and a 100% possibility of rain. So it looks like the rain has eased off a little bit on our camera shots there, but the forecast is for relentless rain, unfortunately, for the duration of this men's race.
But at least it is a tiny bit warmer. And I could be reading too much into this, but I thought I just detected another tiny little motion from Kipchoge's right arm, as if to say to the pacemakers, come on guys, we do need to pick this up just a fraction. On a lighter note, it would be amazing if we could get a camera on this. We can't, but we should give them a mention. I touched earlier the fact that we've all been starved of world-class distance running, and we knew that there were a lot of broadcasters around the world taking the coverage. Apparently, in Eldoret, our coverage is going out on a big screen. I don't know whether you've ever travelled to Eldoret, Mara. I have on numerous occasions. It's a fantastic gateway to so many different distance running camps. You've got the Kipchoge Kano school and orphanage just on the outside of the town. I can picture it now with the school on the left and the orphanage on the right. So Jambo Jambo, if you are watching on the big screen in Eldoret, Kipchoge Kano, the founder of so many, well, generations of athletic superstars. So you can almost picture the scene of all those faces crowding round a big screen, watching the man who has set pulses alight with so many great performances over nearly 2 decades. So thanks to former World Cross Country silver medalist Tim Hutchings for that update that somebody from Eldoret has sent him a text message, and he has sent me one. So we're delighted that this coverage is going out live in Kenya. And what an incredible ambassador Kipchoge is, not only for himself and his family, but for his country and his continent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's the most amazing role model. You know, he talks about inspiring people is sub 2 attempt. In the press conference this week, he talked about inspiring people, and he talked about COVID and the pandemic and giving people hope, and I think he really understands how the role he can have in inspiring and helping other people, you know, being a great role model. I've never been to Eldoret as an athlete, but I grew up in Kenya in Nairobi till I was 8 years old and did visit as a small child. But of course Eldoret and Iten and other areas of Kenya, formidable meccas, if you like, of distance running. A lot of these athletes running today are based there. Of course, the plus side of the mass race not being able to take place today is that it's got a women's race that Hong Kong, Taiwan, the USA and the UK have the biggest numbers. In Kenya, it's 11.
I wonder where they are. We should get cameras on them. The
Maybe-
Kenyan media should get out and cover them.
Yeah, of course, the virtual mass race runners are running in London Marathon bibs, front and back, making sure they do the distance and timing themselves on the London Marathon app. So while you're out and about today, if you see any London Marathon runners, do give them a cheer. So this is a group aiming for Olympic qualification. We spoke earlier during the women's race that qualification suspension due to COVID was lifted by World Athletics. It was due to finish on the 30th of November, but it has been lifted for the road events to reflect the fact that the marathon runners only get a couple of 2 or 3 attempts a year really at racing, the lack of competition opportunities, and also the fact that in Doha the conditions were really unconducive to running qualification times. So brilliant that these athletes have this opportunity. Ben Connor there, the tall athlete in the New Balance kit. Connor ran a PB over the half marathon at the Antrim Half on 12th of September, 60:55, so he's in good form, 27 years old. Johnny Mello, we mentioned earlier, he's the only Brit in this race who has a marathon qualifier already. Mo has, but he's aiming for the track. And the third Brit is Callum Hawkins, who is pre-selected. So several other Brits in this British National Marathon Championship going for the qualification time for Tokyo 2:11:30.
Mara, you also alluded to the fact that from a British point of view, and I wonder whether other federations may follow this example, there is the outside possibility of a selection race, because we know London is going to be on this corresponding weekend next year, October the 3rd. The ballot is open now, by the way. You've got until about 5 o'clock this forthcoming Friday. So no excuses, come on, sign up and get out there and breathe in some fresh air. But I really like the concept of a straight race. I might like the fact that you go first too, and you did Callum Hawkins. But again, we mentioned getting a text from Tim Hutchings, a well-known commentator, and we mentioned this during the elite women's race. He says that straight-out selection race in the USA, which happened on the leap year day, I think this year, February the 29th, is absolutely incredible drama. And I wonder if we are still experiencing some restrictions, how many more national governing bodies might say, okay, do you know what? We haven't got a London in the spring. We're not going to send you, to Boston. We're not going to do it in Dubai. It's too early.
Set the standards for the Olympic qualification, and then each country can set tougher standards, and they decide how they are going to pick their team. So in the USA, you have a straight trial, first 3 past the post, no questions, that's it. In the UK, traditionally the London Marathon has been the trial race, but it's always, to my knowledge, been 1 or 2 athletes, the first or second British athletes across the line in the qualification time, and then a second or third place, sort of a discretionary. And we have had pre-selections. In other countries, it's different. In other countries, they don't have a trial. I spoke to Gerda Stein, the South African, who just missed the national record in the women's race earlier this week. She said they're selecting on times. Athletes can qualify for the Olympics by accumulating points in the world ranking system, and also by finishing in the top 10 in a world marathon major, or top 5, I believe it was, in the World Championships. However, those two methods of qualifying remain suspended. So athletes trying to qualify today have to run 2:11:30. And British Athletics have indicated that they will put on a trial race next spring, details to be decided. But yeah, that will give another opportunity for these athletes to get on that team. There are further races to come. Valencia at the moment is in planning to go ahead in early December, and then into January, February next year. I mean, some race directors around the world may be looking at this and thinking, okay, we can do something similar. So I just wonder if one or two races might appear. Of course, for a race to be eligible for Olympic qualification, certain conditions have to be met. Of course, it has to be officially accurately measured. They have to have anti-doping testing on site on the day, and there are a number of other conditions. So you can't just set up a 26.2 mile race yourself and say, okay, I've qualified. It has to be done officially. So Mo Farah, their multiple track champion, looking pretty relaxed, pacing this Olympic qualification group, and Barrios, the Mexican there, looking very comfortable.
Yes, you mentioned him earlier. He's run inside 2:11 and he should be feeling relatively fresh from here. Johnny Mellor's in that group, ran that low 2:10s. Very, very good performance. So he already has the luxury of knowing he's got the qualification time. There he is, just entering the edge of frame, just on the very right of picture there.
He ran the 5,000 metres at the Doha World Championships last year, and only 27 years old, so we're expecting great things from him in the years to come. Chris Thompson, who we saw right at the start, with at the back of that group, but with a small gap, 39 years old, silver medalist on the track in the European 10,000 metres. And really, it was interesting at the press conference, he sounded very relaxed. He said when lockdown came, he decided to have a bit of a break. He toned down his training, had a bit of a rest, and he said he was really eager and felt he benefited from the rest, and was really up for a good race today. So I think the rest may have done him good.
Yes, we'll have to keep a close eye to see whether he manages to hang on to that group. Maybe he's just off the back out of shot at the moment. He had a really good debut, ran 2:11:19. He was 11th back in 2014. He hasn't had easy build-ups to his marathon since then. I think there was one year where he ran 2:15 and he was really struggling with injury. There is Tomo, having just taken a drink. But he looks okay, he looks quite strong. He's been beset with injuries for so many years. He's a great student of his sport. He's brilliant to stand next to, or sit next to rather, in a commentary box. Right, let's get a take on the split. So 59.37 at 20k. Yeah, so it's not up at 2:06, so we're probably maybe 2:04s, 2:05s, and you might expect, Mara, if he's feeling okay, you may well expect to see negative splits in the second half from Eliud Kipchoge. If he's feeling good, he might throw off the shackles of the pacemakers and say, right, okay boys, enough's enough, on my own, I'm going to dictate the proceedings from here.
Yeah, I mean, the way he's been asking the pacemakers to go quicker, we think that's what he's been doing. I think we could see a faster second half for sure. He looks very relaxed. We were talking earlier about Kipchoge inspiring the next generation of people around the world, and the London Marathon every year holds a mini marathon for children that we mentioned during the women's race, traditionally on the last 3 miles of the course, but this year it's had to be done virtually. But 150,000 children across the UK from over 500 schools, primary school children, are taking part. They're asked to run or walk or push or be pushed, somehow cover 2.6 miles between the 28th of September and the 9th of October. So that virtual mini marathon underway as we speak.
Yes, I think the organisers said they had something crazy, like 100,000 registering in the first few days. It absolutely went wild across primary schools in the United Kingdom.
Mo Farah is a previous winner of the mini marathon. David Weir in the wheelchair race as well. Previously, before joining the main London Marathon, competed in the mini marathon. So, for children, getting the London Marathon on their radar early and developing champions of the future is a really key part of the London Marathon. The London Marathon Charitable Trust, of course, is also very active in all sorts of areas. They donate every year to good cause in part of the pandemic and getting people more active.
So it is almost out at 2:06 pace. Kipchoge will want to push things on here in the second half. I did notice actually, Mara, whilst you were running us through those various statistics and the good news, the high profile that this race brings to distance running on all levels, club, fun runners, children, the next generation. Kipchoge missed his drink at that previous station. I'm not sure whether he hung back in the group to then get some generic basic water, but he went, I saw his right arm go out for his drink and he missed.
Okay, well in wet conditions like this, especially if you've got gloves on, it's quite difficult catching your bottles. When I was racing, I used to put plasters on the side of my bottles when it was wet so that I could, just to make them less slippery. But they are getting drinks every lap, and it's 2.15k per lap, so it won't be long before he gets another chance. The elite athletes, of course, can all provide their own drinks. They are provided with water and Lucozade from the organisers, but they can provide their own drinks. In conditions like this, you can afford to drink less. A lot of people obsess about hydration during a marathon, but it's worth remembering that you can dehydrate a little bit over the course of the race. If you finish the race a bit dehydrated, that's fine, because the race is over. You want to be fully hydrated on the start line, but over the course of the race, a small amount of dehydration is okay. And of course, the less weight you're carrying, the faster you can go for the same effort. So in conditions like this, 10 degrees, it's wet, they compared to something like Doha, where it was exceptionally hot, the athletes can get away with drinking less. We just got a glimpse of Herzog there, the Austrian athlete, Peter Herzog, improving a lot in recent years. His current PB 2:10.57. So we've talked a lot about the Brits aiming for the qualifying time, but other athletes as well will be aiming for that qualifying time as well. Amongst them, Stephen Scullion from Ireland, PB of 2:11.52. In July this year, he said he was retiring, but then he said, no, I'm not, I'm still going. I think he's had he found lockdown very difficult, training in isolation and so on. Brett Robinson of Australia, who we saw right at the beginning, he broke the Australian national record for the half marathon in February this year in Marugame in Japan, 59.57. So good recent form for him. He ran 2:10.55 in April last year in London.
Yes, and he also had a good run at the World Cross in Aarhus, which had an absolutely brutal hill in it. So that was a course to separate the men from the boys, as they say. It was a brilliant edition of the World Cross. They did a fantastic job. So I wonder at what stage we will see a move. We've been focusing our attention and paying great tribute to Eliud Kipchoge and all that he's done. Picture there with the purple bib, 2:55. He ran brilliantly last year and put Kipchoge under all sorts of pressure. So although we've been talking about how incredible Kipchoge is and how consistent he is, we've got guys in this field who will also be feeling, in theory, pretty comfortable with 2:06, and they might fancy this could be the day they could put him under pressure.
yeah, this kind of race plays into the hands of athletes who are good over the shorter distances and have good finishing speed. So, I mean, for Kipchoge, if he really wants to win this race, I think he needs to start picking up the pace and dropping a few of the runners in this still quite big lead group. The tall figure in the blue vest to Kipchoge's left, as you look at the screen, is Kipchunga, Vincent Kipchunga from Kenya. This is his London Marathon debut. He won the Amsterdam Marathon last November.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you mentioned him actually, that's a great shout. He hadn't run inside 2:10 until last year. He ran 2:06.56 in Vienna in April, won Amsterdam with 2:05.09. He is absolutely huge. He's built more like a cruiserweight boxer. He's clearly got a huge amount of strength as well as stamina, so we'll have to keep our eye on the 30-year-old Vincent Kipchumba. Have a look at him again, Mara. When you see him silhouetted against the rest of the athletes in this group, he's got incredible muscle mass for a marathon runner, and he'll be riding high from the confidence of going low 2:05s in Amsterdam a year ago. He's just on the left. You see what I mean? He's massive.
Quite tall. Well, I mean, marathons on TV can be deceptive. Relative to Kipchoge, yes, he looks big, but if you saw him in real life, I guarantee he would look tiny. I mean, when you see marathon runners typically in real life are really, really small. So he's quite tall, but yeah, cameras can be deceptive. Sorry, Amsterdam Marathon in October last year, not November, as I said earlier. So the Amsterdam champion there, hanging right in there with Kipchoge. Pacemakers still going. Sometimes they drop out at halfway, but these three obviously have been instructed to go to 25k, possibly even further. Kip Sarem there on the right of your screens, also his London Marathon debut. So the Olympic qualification group going strong, looking pretty good. Still quite a big group there. Woodfine there in the black vest. He is from Canada, PB 2:13.16, so not far off the Olympic qualification time. Number 9 pace there with Mo Farah is Shadrach Kimining, who we spoke about earlier, 59.27 in the Houston Half Marathon in January this year. Ben Connor looking pretty comfortable at the moment. Gabius there in the Nike outfit, he's from Germany.
Mo looks so comfortable at the moment, doesn't he? Having a look over his shoulder. Side-on tracking angle there. Looking at Barrios and Connor, as you mentioned, making his debut. Mella still in that group with that really excellent low 2:10s.
Arne Gabius, I mentioned a moment ago, from Germany, PB of 2:08.13.
Yeah, and 11th in New York last autumn, Gabius, 2:12, which is not a bad time. It's funny, isn't it? When you look at people's times, it can be a little bit misleading with New York, because you do have to add on a couple of minutes to reflect the fact that it's an iconic city and a great course, but it's a tough one as well. So 2:12 from Gabius in New York was not too shabby at all last year.
I ran New York once and I found it tough, I have to say. Quite a lot of undulation. You start on a bridge, so you go uphill for a lot of the first mile, then a lot of undulations over the remaining bridges. Central Park itself quite hilly, but a brilliant race. And they haven't used pacemakers as far back as I'm aware, and so you get really terrific racing in New York and brilliant atmosphere. But sadly, one of the several World Marathon Majors races which is not going ahead this year due to the COVID pandemic.
Yes, we all hope that these iconic races get back 2021. Fingers, toes, and all the rest crossed. Yeah, it was 62.55 at halfway. I wonder, Mara, if Kipchoge's feeling good, what sort of pace we'll see for the second half. Negative splits, surely, you would think.
Yes, I think so. I mean, 2:06 is slow by his standards. And I'm not sure that the weather is sufficient to really slow them down that much. Just checking on the Olympic qualification group, the halfway split. Looks like they went through halfway in 65.18. So about a minute inside Olympic qualification standard at the moment. Several athletes.
It'll help the fact that the pace has been steady rather than spectacular at this point. Tristan Woodfine is moving through the field a little bit. He also went through in low 65s. Moeen is just about a minute off this pace. He's on course for about 2:08 at the moment. The Norwegian, who's fourth on the European all-time list, but led for so long with that 2:05.48 from Fukuoka back in 17. But
I think we're seeing an injection of pace here, Rob.
Yeah.
That just getting strung out. It looked like it was Tola at the back, just trying to hang on. So I just wonder if we'll look out for the next mile split and bring you it as soon as we can. Wasihun in there, one of the younger Ethiopians who we thought might possibly be one of the runners who could challenge Kipchoge.
yeah, and he's got a good story, Wasihun, because he grew up on a farm similar to Eliud Kipchoge, and he was an 8 and 1500 metre runner. And I believe, I mean, an element of this is a touch apocryphal, I think, but I believe some intervention from Kenenisa Bekele led to Wasihun deciding that actually he might be better off as a marathon runner rather than a middle distance runner. And certainly the manner of 2:03.16 last year, finishing third, would indicate that was a very, very good decision. He's run 8 marathons, Wasihun. He's in that little group. 4 occasions he's run inside 2:06 and the 2:04.37 in Amsterdam 2 years ago, as well as the 2:03.16. And you know, another athlete in that group, Mara, that we haven't spoken about at all is Marius Kipsiran, the 32-year-old. A couple of podiums, you know, nothing spectacular, Eindhoven and Milan, but he won Rotterdam last year. There he is, just on the right of picture with the purple bib.
Yeah.
He won Rotterdam last year in 2:04.11. He's 21st on the all-time list. He looks okay at the moment, rubbing shoulders with Geremu and Kipchoge,
Yeah.
distance running royalty. So we need to keep a little bit of an eye on Kipsiran.
Yeah, he took 2 minutes off his best when he won Rotterdam in April last year. 31 years old, 8 victories for 1, sub 2, and suddenly 2:02, 2:03, 4 guys look like also runs. But these are incredibly fast times. It's interesting, coming back to the shoe debate, if we look at the times, the number of performers who've run under specific times for the men in recent years, the number of men under 2:04 in 2016 was 4, in 2017 was 3, in 2018 was 1, in 2019 it was 9. If we look at a slightly slower time, sub 2:08, in 2016 there were 44, in 2017 there were 56, 2018 72, and in 2019 101. So the sport, the event is progressing rapidly in terms of depth. Whether that's related to the shoes or just the athletes are getting better, there's more depth, more competition, we don't know. Probably a combination of both.
Yeah, I would say both. And those statistics you read, that figure for the sub 208s has doubled then, from 44 up, you know, the first one you gave, to
That's right,
over 100.
more than doubled.
Yeah.
There were 44 sub 208s in 2016
Yeah,
and 101 in 2019.
Yeah,
And these are
that's huge.
performers, not performances. So some athletes may have run these fast times more than once.
yeah, that's a great statistic. So, Kipchoge having a little look to his right-hand side, and Cisse Lema coming through. Lema is the 10th fastest in history, finishing third in Berlin last year, behind Kenenisa Bekele, who went within 2 seconds of Kipchoge's world record. And Lema, barrel-chested athlete from Ethiopia, right up alongside Noah Kipchoge, and clearly fancies the job here. This, do you know what, Mara? This has got the makings of turning into a really intriguing race. It's not necessarily panning out as we may have expected it to on paper and on so many occasions when Kipchoge has played centre stage at big city marathons around the world. They're lapping Lund, by the way.
Yeah. Yep, Cisse Lema wasn't at the top of my list for challenges for Kipchoge, but then you look at his CV, 2:03.36 in Berlin last year. You know, another of these men who are truly world class, but so somehow get overlooked because Kipchoge is running that much faster.
Lema's wearing that distinctive lime green top and the green bib on the extreme left of picture. Well, little bit by little bit, Mara, it's amazing, always amazes me with marathons. You think to yourself, oh, we're going to be talking for 2 hours here, and all of a sudden you find yourself getting towards the business end of the race, and this is where it's really going to start to get interesting over the next 15.
We'll bring you the latest 5k splits. Gone through 25k, we'll bring you 30k splits as soon as they've gone through that. But yes, the second half is where the action starts. In the first half of a marathon, you're just trying to relax, use as little energy as you possibly can, make sure you get your drinks, and be ready to race in the second half. Okay, and there was the final pacemaker dropping out there. So all the pacemakers now gone in this lead group, and it's up to the athletes to do what they want with this elite men's race here in London.
Yeah, now we see the race proper. Pacemaker's gone. Now it comes down to the tactics, the timing, the patience, and who wants it. By the way, I know we're broadcasting here to a global audience, but people won't mind me mentioning the excitement that apparently this race is generating all across Kenya and in Eldoret. There are apparently tens of thousands of people out on the streets watching on a huge screen. Eliud's wife, Grace, and his family are watching in a downtown Eldoret hotel 500 metres away from the screen. I'm reliably informed here, it says, our TV station has free-to-air broadcast rights, which means Kenyans without access to satellite television are able to watch and enjoy the coverage, which is brilliant to hear. So if you are somewhere in Kenya, we're really glad you're enjoying this, because so are we. Mari Yamauchi, 6th in the Olympic Marathon in Beijing in 2008, myself, Rob Walker. It's always one of our favourite days of the year, and now we really have got an intriguing situation here. The Amsterdam Marathon winner, he just looks absolutely massive to me in connection, in contrast to the rest of the athletes. Vincent Kipchumba alongside Cisse Lema, Kipchoge looking okay alongside Mosinet Geremu, and Geremu, the World Championship silver medalist, after finishing second to Eliud last April. That is a fantastic quartet of athletes, with Wasihun just behind Kipchoge. So all the main characters you would expect to feature are right here. And yes, people were disappointed when we lost Kenenisa Bekele to the calf injury, but this is now a really, genuinely intriguing race. We've missed distance running, but today we are back, and in a big way. Mara, are we potentially seeing the king coming under a little bit of pressure here in the last 45 minutes or so?
He certainly cuts their foot down, throws in surges, others have to respond, and then they might slow up a little bit, then there'll be further surges. And it's Lema and Kipchumba who've thrown down the gauntlet for Kipchoge. I mean, I must say Kipchumba looks really easy. So whether, how long can they keep this going? Are they going to pay for it later?
Well, we'll have to keep a close eye on these splits, Mara, to see how far ahead of 206 they begin to move. What are we there? So, just trying to get those last official splits.
We just saw this lead group lapping one of the British athletes, Jack Gray, that was, Cambridge and Coleridge AC athlete. This is his debut. He's got a personal best of 63.39 for the half marathon from Valencia last year.
Yeah, the pace has increased a little, but it's still not as fast as you would normally expect to see from Eliud Kipchoge. I reckon it's low 05s maybe high 04s, but then
Yeah.
we were expecting to see negative splits, bearing in mind the modest nature of the pace at halfway.
Yeah, just inside 206 pace at halfway, and if they run a negative split, 204, 205, that sort of territory. Let's remember, this is 5 minutes slower than Kipchoge has run before.
Well, it's a fascinating race unfolding here. Lemma looks composed at the front. Kipchoge with that beautiful, long, economic stride in second place. Kipchoge in the group there won't be panicking, but as you said, Mara, it's a very different scenario to the one that we're normally used to seeing unfold, with him dominating these races from start to finish. This will test him tactically, and we'll find out he should be up to the task, and we'll find that out over the next 35-40 minutes or so.
There is a moderate wind today. The forecast says 15 miles an hour, and I'm just wondering if Kipchoge is happy to let others do the hard work at the front and just stay in that group, and just preserve his energy a little bit longer. It doesn't look from the trees too windy, but that is the forecast.
And it's funny, you know, we're understandably showing respect to the other athletes here, and we're saying maybe we've got a great race on our hands. And you know, such is his brilliance. By his own high standards, he might just break out into a sprint and suddenly create a 100-meter lead on the rest of the field. But he's paying close attention to Cisse Lemma there. Lemma, remember, who's been on the podium in Berlin. He was third in Tokyo earlier this year. What was it, second, third of March?
From the USA, he's in the, I believe that's the second, no, that's the Olympic qualifying group. PB of 2:09.25 for Jared Ward, and he ran 2:10.45 in New York last year. He finished 6th in the 2016 Olympics. Best place to finish in the Olympics.
That's the highest finish by a British woman, isn't it? 6th?
It is, yes. Joined with Priscilla Welch, who also finished 6th in LA in 1984. And the Austrian Herzog on the left of our picture we mentioned earlier, Miucci in that group.
He's a really good runner, Miucci. I always enjoy watching the Italians. They generally perform really well at the major championships.
Of course, Stefano Baldini won in 2004 Athens Olympics, so really good championship pedigree from Italy.
Oh yeah, and you go back to the late 80s with Gelindo Bourdain. I mean, but Baldini, I think Baldini had a couple of world and European medals as well. A classic example of somebody who wouldn't necessarily have challenged in an eyeballs out as fast as you can run big city marathon, but in terms of his tactical nous and his ability to pull out medals, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. I was in the stadium when he won in 2004, and everybody was expecting Paul Tergat to really give the rest of the field problems, because I'm pretty sure Tergat was the reigning world record holder. He'd become the first man in history inside 2:05, but he ran out of steam towards the end. It was a brutal race in Athens, but Baldini ran so well for that gold medal. I must be showing my age. I can't believe that was 16 years ago, Mara. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Time flies. So the athletes must be getting very near to 18 miles. So I just want to remind viewers who may have missed women's race earlier, the mile marker at mile 18 was designed by three young architects based in London, Ayanna Blair Forge, Shreya Radia and Quincy Haynes. That was in a competition done last year between the London Marathon and the Stephen in his younger years, and the mile 18 marker redesigned in his honour by budding architects. Stephen himself wanted to be an architect. This year they were going to run a competition for all the mile markers to be redesigned, and that is on hold because of the pandemic, but we hope it will return next year.
Now I think they've moved ahead of 2:06 pace there, 1:29 at 30k, so it's still yet to really explode in terms of the pace we might have predicted from Eliud Kipchoge, but we've got a great race on our hands. It's a different type of day here in London. Tamirat Tola, fantastic championship athlete. He's won the Dubai Marathon, but before that, World Championship silver 2 years ago in London, and got a 10,000 metre bronze behind that man Mo Farah in 2016. Mo just sharing a word or two there with Connor. Mara said he's making a highly anticipated debut, and that's Jeff Whiteman on the PA system. I think he was asking Mo what he's doing via the tannoy. I think he said he's going to do one more.
I think Mo was looking for instructions from the group there about the pace.
4:47. It's another steady, solid mile.
So changing of the guard at the front of this group. That's Kipchoge now in the orange vest at the front, I think. The Rotterdam champion from last year, and Kipchoge in the black vest.
Yes, Kipchoge, low 205s in Toronto last year, won Toronto the previous year. Kipchoge's in really good form, Mara. He ran just outside the hour for third in Prague on the 5th of September, so he's in cracking shape. Ninth fastest in the field on paper, but I think as a result of that sharp, crisp half marathon in Prague, he'll be feeling quite confident at this stage.
Yeah, of course, recent form had such a lack of competition. We don't really know much about the recent form, but as you say, Kipchoge 60.06 in Prague on the 5th of September, so very promising from him. PB of 2:05.13 and improved. In 2016 he ran 2:13, 2017 ran 2:07 and down to 2:05 in 2019.
So, you finished on the podium on the London Marathon. You've been around at the top level and commentated for many years.
Yeah.
What's your instinct here on how long you think, if Kipchoge is feeling fine and he's up for this and he's determined in his own mind to boss this race and he's comfortable at the way it's panning out, how late do you think he'll leave it before he goes for a big surge? Because he surely wouldn't want this to come down to an eyeballs out 250 metre sprint, not when he knows he's got the likes of Mosinet Geremu breathing down his neck, who wasn't too far away from him last April here with 2:02.55. How late will he leave it, do you think?
From memory, I don't think I've ever seen Kipchoge in a proper sprint finish. He always goes several miles before the finish, so give it another 5 minutes, I would say. I mean, he looks comfortable. They've picked up the pace. He's just, it's still another 30 minutes or so of running. The danger, I've been here myself, the danger if you go too soon, and there we get the laps to go counter firing up, so 5 laps to go. If you go too soon, you put in a surge too soon, and then you have to keep that effort going for too long, then you pay for it. So let's not forget, this is comfortable in Kipchoge terms. 206, 205. I think he's just biding his time a little longer. But Kipchoge next to him is looking very comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. He looks very, very calm, relaxed and composed. I guess from the perspective of these other athletes, Mara, the way they've got to look at this is in a funny kind of way. They're under no pressure. Everybody is expecting the Olympic champion, the world record holder, the first man in history to run inside 2 hours, albeit on a non-ratifiable race. Everyone's expecting him to win. So they're more than capable of racing at these speeds. Maybe the question is, how fast can they accelerate? We know that they can run 2.3s, and in the case of Geremu, high 2.02s, but how quickly can they accelerate and how well can they maintain that additional pace? That's what we might begin to find out over the next 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, I mean, this is slightly dangerous territory for Kipchoge, having this many people for company at this stage in a race. You know, if he's running 202, 203, he would have far fewer rivals around him. I mean, Geremu, you know, 202.55 in London last year, stayed with Kipchoge all to the end. If anyone can do it, I think he can. I'm just keeping my eye on Kipchoge. He looks very relaxed.
Well, he just discarded his cap. Is that a sign that he's about to go for a major injection of pace? I'm reliably informed when Kipchoge turned pro on the US track circuit, the cap was tossed aside when he was ready to go for it. And if you go way back in the history books, when Alain Mimoun finally beat Emil Zatopek to an Olympic title, which he did in 56 in Melbourne over the marathon, he had a handkerchief tied around the top of his head, and he discarded that hanky. He said he never managed to find it. I interviewed him once in Paris. Absolutely extraordinary human being, sadly passed away now and fondly remembered by everybody connected to French sport. Mimoun discarded his hanky and then ended up making history. Anyway, so it might be a sign.
The same story from Veronique Marot, Rob, who back in about 2006, I think it was, pushed her down the UK all-time list by one place. And she said, I remember talking with her and saying, when you take your gloves off or your hat off or whatever it is, that's when the race begins.
Well, it's game on at some stage, isn't it? Because you quite rightly said, if it's 02 or 03, 3/4 of these men are not in this group. But when it's mid 205s, suddenly that's a conversation they're more than capable of having. And at some stage, somebody is going to have to inject some pace to begin whittling this group down. There's Connor leading Herzog, the Austrian, who's run inside 2:11. Mella looking good there in third place in that group. And this might be, I thought perhaps that was a replay, was it? Of Mo Farah deciding enough is enough. The reigning Olympic champion over 10,000 metres has made his contribution to this year's Virgin Money London Marathon. That's him done, and he leaves the rest of the guys who he was running alongside for so long to try and ensure they come home inside 2:11:30, the Olympic qualifying as set by World Athletics.
In the black, third in that group is Melikaya France of South Africa, 2:14:57 PB. So he's having a cracking race so far, and would follow on the 12th of September. So good recent form. It's his debut marathon, so I think he may well get under that 2:11:30.
In Kenya, our diversity is our strength, and if you don't find a beautiful place in this world, then come to Kenya.
Kick off the season on a winning note by entering our Premier League competition. Simply enter the daily quiz and you can stand in line to for the next 18 weeks. Head to supersport.com for all the details. Brought to you by BangBet, your premier sports betting partner in Africa. BangBet, your premier bet. Green flag in the back. Reds up. Lights out. Every pulse racing moment. 2020 MotoGP live on Supersport.
Instead, we've got cutouts of royalty, past winners, fancy dress runners to give the race some atmosphere. I must say hats off to the organisers. They've really done everything possible to put this race on safely. All the athletes had devices around their necks which buzzed if they got within 2 meters of anybody else. Frequent testing. We saw a couple of the women's finishes elbow bumping earlier, so this biosecure bubble around St James's Park has ensured that the athletes can compete safely. Of course, it's not only the athletes here today. A race like this takes a huge amount of preparation. We saw pictures yesterday of people building the finish gantry and these fences you can see around the course. Somebody's been out there putting down the blue line. So all those people will have been tested and following safety measures. So pretty huge task, but I hope London will inspire and be a model for other races to come during the pandemic. So Johnny Mellor just trying to hang on at the back of that group, but of course he already has the Tokyo qualification time. So Kip Saran now pushing it at the front of this group. I must say, Rob, all of these athletes look pretty comfortable, and it's surprising to see such a big group this far on in the race. At the back of that group in the blue t-shirt is TB of 2:04.06, set in Dubai in 2018. And he came second in the London World Championships Marathon in 2017 with a time of 2:09.49.
Yeah, I like Toller. He's got brilliant 10,000 metre pedigree. Easy to forget he got the bronze behind Farah, which we mentioned a little while ago in Rio. But this is, well, it's just not how either of us, I think, expected this race to pan out. Of course, Kipchoge might be feeling totally comfortable. I think they may have increased the pace a little bit, but it's 2:05, maybe there or thereabouts. So if Kipchoge's feeling good, he should have a lot of running left in his legs. Last year, his winning time on the traditional London Marathon course, 2:02.37. He's now hugging that blue line. We've had a couple of people. Cisse Lemmer in the lime green, he had a crack at the front. The huge figure of Vincent Kipchoge second to Eliud last year. And this is a fascinating way for this race to now be unfolding. The times are almost an irrelevance. It's not going to be a world record. It's not going to be as fast as Kipchoge has produced perhaps on any of his previous 4 London Marathon wins. But now we get to see what he's like as a tactical racer. And Mara, we might see some sensational acceleration coming. It's got to happen at some stage soon, because as you quite rightly said, he might not want this to come down to a 200-metre burn-up. It's amazing. It's so intriguing and enthralling. After so many months of not having any distance races, we've got a real cracker coming here for the elite men, following up Bridget Koskai's successful London Marathon title defence a couple of hours ago.
I mean, the received wisdom model in marathon racing, Rob, used to be that you win it well before the finish. You know, you put in a surge, let's say mile 22, 23, you drop your rivals, and then you just have to keep the gap. But such is the depth in men's marathon racing these days that more frequently we've seen sprint finishes decide these races. I can't remember Kipchoge winning in a sprint finish, so I suspect he's going to put the hammer down soon, but you just don't know. You know, the depth is so high, and this is relatively slow for for these men, for the standard that these men have run before.
You mentioned tight finishes. Do you recall Gezahaina Bera, the brilliant Ethiopian? I think there's some statistic along the lines of, across his Olympic title and world title and his London Marathon win, the combined winning margin that he had in all 3 races was less than 10 seconds. Because when he beat Baldini, which I think was 03 here, when he beat Baldini in 03, they were both given exactly the same time. So Abera was one who left it incredibly late to try and win, and did so at 2 major championships.
That's the beauty of having a sprint finish. You know, that's what we see Mo doing on the track. You know, he leaves it late and he knows he's got a sprint finish to beat everyone. I was the opposite. I don't have a sprint finish, so I was always trying to make my moves relatively early on in the race.
Well, and you saw that mile split going through there, Mara. 5 minutes. We would not necessarily have been expecting that from Eliud Kipchoge.
No.
I think that's definitely a smile. It may be, Mara, he's just thinking, right, okay, today's not going to be about fast times. I'm not bothered about whether a 2:06 becomes a low 2:05s. Everybody knows I can run quick times. I'm going to do something spectacular and I'm going to win in a completely different way. He's clearly, if he's feeling good, and he looks like he is, he's clearly not bothered anymore about the time.
Yeah, I mean, this time is relatively pedestrian for him. It's not going to be a record of any kind. But I'm getting a bit surprised he's leaving it this late. You know, normally at this stage of the race, we've got, less than 20 minutes to go. We would normally see Kipchoge out at the front, with certainly fewer than, how many have we got here? 8 in this group? He might have 1 or 2 for company, but that's it. So this is a bit dangerous for Kipchoge, to my mind.
Well, it's giving us a different side of the cordon. Has passed a test, a couple of physios, agents, but not many. But every single person we could see along the side of the course, there aren't many of them. They have all passed tests.
Yeah, we know this course is fast. David Weir, who'll be competing in the wheelchair race this afternoon, broke the 3-minute barrier on this course. We know it was considered as a venue for the Kipchoge sub-2 attempt, so it's very fast, but we haven't seen the times that we were expecting, and I think the weather possibly has put them off. A lot of new things this year, you know, difficulty training during the pandemic, different. So it's possible some of these athletes aren't quite as sharp as they normally would be had they been racing in the months leading up.
Well, we've lost a couple, but not many. There's still a huge array of talent in this group. You mentioned Shura Kitata, tiny figure that you can't really see in that pack. Second behind Eliud Kipchoge 2 years ago. Geremu right on Eliud Kipchoge's shoulder. Toller's at the back of that group, along with Cisse Lemma. Lemma, the athlete in lime green, who definitely had a turn at the front. And Kitata has decided to take it on. He's run inside the hour this year for the half marathon, but it was a long time ago, 8th in Houston, so relatively close to his PB. 9 podiums from 12 marathons, Kitata. And he's decided around St James's Park that it's time to put a little bit of an injection of pace in after a 5-minute mile. So Kitata leads. Kipchoge, the world record holder, the Olympic champion, in second. The defending London Marathon champion, bidding for an unprecedented 5 able-bodied titles. That would be an outright record. Geremu he couldn't be running any closer to Eliud Kipchoge if he tried.
Yeah, just tucking in there behind. I mean, Geremu's run a great race. I don't think he's been at the front. He's just tucked in there, ticked off the miles, tracking Kipchoge very closely. If anyone can get close to him, it's him. So, but honestly, all of these men look comfortable. Tola looks a bit in danger of being dropped off the back of that group. group. When they were strung out a moment ago, I thought he was going to lose contact, but you know,
beginning to flow a little bit here, Mara, even though we're a couple of miles away, we weren't allowed to get beside the course, and we're not even in the same room, you and I, so the social distancing is adhered to even in the respective commentary boxes. But this, I mean, if Eliud Kipchoge has got a problem here, and he might not, he might be lulling us, he might be just teasing us with a bit of drama and put in the most, incredible burst of acceleration we've seen in recent marathons. But if he were to have a problem here and he didn't win, are we just too close to this sport? How big a story would it be, do you think?
well, every great champion's career has to taper off and end somewhere. You know, he's been so dominant in the sport until now. He can't go on winning and producing incredible times forever. I'm not saying if he gets beaten today that will be it for him, far from it. But, you know, eventually, and there's just so much depth in the men's marathon, youngsters like Yeremu coming through, and even relatively unknown athletes. You know, we've got a handful here, but there are hundreds, thousands of East African athletes who are world class. Only a handful can ever race in these big races, but as soon as a newcomer comes through, you know, they put pressure on the big guys.
I thought I just detected a slight grimace there, Mara, whilst you were talking. I'm not sure we would have necessarily expected Kipchoge to be happy towards the back of that group. Alongside, yes, and biding his time, possibly, but Eliud Kipchoge, the world record holder, has allowed a few metres to grow. And I'm not sure about you, but I can't quite think of a solid reason why he'd be doing that consciously, unless he was struggling.
Yeah, I agree. Surprising that. There's a definite gap. It's small, but there's a definite gap. If he were intending to win this race, he would certainly not be doing this. So Kipchoge looks like he could possibly be in trouble.
He hasn't lost a race since he finished second to Wilson Kipsang when he broke the world record back in Berlin in 2013. He has been the model of consistency. He is arguably the greatest marathon runner in history. Yes, okay, he is yet to successfully give. For the first time in his marathon career, is running into problems. It is the only reason he would be allowing a gap like this to grow. It is probably the only reason you would think why he would be running 3 to 4 minutes or 2 to 3 minutes slower than we've seen from him in any race other than the Olympic marathon, which was a totally different scenario. Kipchoge has got to find something here. I think possibly we may have seen and we may be witnessing his first moment of weakness as a marathon runner. Would you agree, Mark Yamauchi?
Absolutely. The worst he's ever done in a marathon is second, and he's won every other race. So this is not something Kipchoge, not a position Kipchoge will want to be in. I'm just wondering, so Tola now dropped off that group. So real injection of pace, I think, is going on. We'll bring you the latest mile split as soon as we have it. Kipruto also dropped, so I think they're really pushing the pace at the front of that group. I mean, Kipchoge looks okay. He doesn't look like he's suffering that much, but just... it's a bit puzzling that he hasn't got a grimace on his face.
I think there is, occasionally, there has been a tiny grimace. You would argue this, Mara. It would be one thing to be right there with the group and maybe get out-sprinted by somebody 5 or 6 years younger in an eyeballs-out burst to the line. But if Kipchoge ends up running something like 2:06 or 2:07, for somebody who has made 2:02 and 2:03 and 2:04 his metronomic norm, there must be a problem for him today. there must surely,
Yeah.
there must be an injury, there must be something that he was gracious enough not to talk about in advance of the race, to preempt an excuse. There's something not quite working for Kipchoge today, and we might find out after the race.
I don't know about an injury. I mean, he didn't say anything about an injury. He's appeared to be perfectly comfortable. You know, there's no indication of something going wrong. That last mile split, 4:46 for the leaders. I'm struggling to understand what's happening with Kipchoge, because he doesn't look like he's really struggling. At this stage of a race, if you're intending to win, you work 110% not to get dropped by the lead group. But he looked like he was coasting, and yet he got dropped. So not quite sure what's happening for Kipchoge there, but the lead men must very soon be approaching 1 lap to go.
Yes, we've just seen Peter Herzog, by the way, the Austrian, just ahead of Connor and Mellor. This is the battle for the British title. Connor making his debut, as Mara indicated. He ran just inside 61 minutes for a half marathon PB recently. Mellor's already got the qualification time with that excellent performance in Seville, finishing 22nd, but just outside 2:10. So there's a real duel going to go on between the two Britons wearing identical arm warmers. Meanwhile, the key piece of information we need to know at the front is whether Eliud Kipchoge has managed to mount some kind of comeback on the lead group. But I agree with you, Mara, there isn't a valid reason why he...
Kipchoge's wealth, that never has appeared until now. I mean, that gap is too big, I would say, for Kipchoge too. He was catching Tola a moment ago, but I don't see how he can make up that group now.
No, and this means, sorry Mara, this now means what a massive opportunity. Chris Thompson coming up there to be lapped. He's having a tough day alongside Dowie Griffiths. But what an opportunity for one of these young men in this group now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking all about Kipchoge being beat, but you know, these guys at the front, they've really taken the race to him. Still 5 in that lead group. I think we may yet get a sprint finish. They've taken it in turns doing the heavy lifting at the front. You know, let's not take what Kipchoge is being beaten, but let's not take it away from these 5 men at the front. Kipchoge, for me, has been looking very comfortable throughout.
Yes, Kipchoge, if you're just joining us, he's the tall figure at the back of the group. There's Eliud Kipchoge. His reign as London Marathon champion is about to come to an end. So Eliud Kipchoge is not going to become a 5-time London Marathon champion this year. What a race we've got now. Shura Katata with the lime headband. He was second behind Kipchoge 2 years ago. Cisse Lemmer, there's the battle for the British title. Johnny Mellor now coming past Connor.
So these two having an absolute blinder. Johnny Mellor, coached by Steve Vernon, lives up in the Peak District, so plenty of hills, but both these athletes, Connor doing his debut today, Johnny Mellor already with the qualification time, but both of them looking very strong in these final stages.
They'll be unaware of the drama unfolding up ahead. It's Katata with the lime headband. Then you've got Cisse Lemmer, the 10th fastest in history, with the lime green vest. 1:59.19 at 40k. But this is not about times today. This is about a story of one man's quest for greatness that has taken him to the top, but has seen him today fall short of his own high standards. There'll be shockwaves going through Kenyan distance running at the moment. I mentioned all those people who'll be watching in Eldoret. Well, now they'll be hoping that Kipchoge can fly the flag for Kenya. This great rivalry unfolding once again between two beautiful, proud nations separated by from Kenya. Who has got the sprint fit? Who has got the belief? Maybe Mara, if you had to pick a favourite at the moment, from you has got a fantastic turn of speed. We see some fantastic distance races in India every year, and Geremu ran 59.11 in the brilliant Delhi half marathon way back in 2014. It's an indication that he's got good speed in his legs. He was just outside the top 10 in the 10,000 metres 5 years ago in Beijing, and he's been right on the leader's shoulders all the way through. He would love to upgrade his second place finish from last year to glory and number one this year. Maybe this is destined to be Geremu's day. If it is, he's putting himself in exactly the right position to strike.
Absolutely. He's run a really smart race, letting others do the hard work at the front, just tucking in there. You know, second here last year, second in Doha. Would be great to see him on top of the podium, but I think of these four, I think he and Kipchoge look the most comfortable to me. I think Wasihun is the figure we just saw, having just got dropped from that group. Yeah, I think that is Wasihun just gone through the camera there.
Sorry, Mara.
This reminds me of Daniel Wanjiru winning back in 2016, I think it was. Relative unknown, came from behind and won, and we it was a bit of a surprise.
Well, we have had shock results and great drama and upsets, and this is in the process of becoming one of them as we watch this battle between Conor and Mella for the British national title. Fantastic debut from Conor, who ran a very good half marathon as part of his preparation, and Mella is backing up the excellent run he produced in Seville here, with another one in rather different conditions here in London, and he's maybe just beginning to show all that class against Conor. We'll keep a close eye on that one, and we'll keep an even closer eye on this four-way battle for glory between three Ethiopians and a Kenyan. A couple of lapped athletes not part of that group. Kitata, it's been interesting from Kitata, Mara, because it hasn't been a sudden burst of energy from him. It's been a gradual winding up, and they're all now perhaps beginning to really work, with maybe a question mark emerging for Lemmer, who allowed a metre or two to grow, but is now closed up on Geremu just in front of him and is continually checking his watch, maybe just an indication that he's feeling tired as he glances up towards Kipchoge.
Yeah, Kitata's done the work at the front of this group for the last few miles. He looks slightly like he's labouring there. I mean, in these kind of circumstances, you know, if the pace is dawdling a bit and nobody wants to take it on, it's up to you to do it, and good on Kitata for doing it, but this is very hard to call. They all look comfortable. Lemmer looked like he was in danger of being dropped, and now he comes surging through. I think we're going to have a sprint finish. And
look, that perhaps I maybe thought that Geremu might be able to draw on the fast finish he produced in Delhi a few years ago, but Geremu's suddenly the man who struggled. So he who would be king hasn't taken advantage of Eliud Kipchoge's very tired figure up ahead. There are casualties all around this 2.25 kilometre course. Lemmer, Kitata, Kipchoge. Kipchoge is the slowest on paper of the three, but he looks up for the fight here, and he's got a huge size advantage, and maybe Lemmer, that's the second time in these little groups that Lemmer has allowed a little gap to form. 2:03.36, finishing third in Berlin last year. Kitata might fancy the job here. He's been the one to inject the pace. Geremu's definitely gone. He's going to have to work hard to hang on for fourth place. So who is going to have the sprint finish here? It's Kitata, it's Lemmer, it's Kipchoge. Will it be an Ethiopian or a Kenyan on top of the podium? If it's a Kenyan, it's not the one we were expecting. It's not going to be Eliud Kipchoge's day. It's a three-way battle for the line. Kipchoge's trying to pull away from Kitata, using those long legs, but Kitata's not finished. What a race, what a finish. It's Kenya against Ethiopia. The scalp of Eliud Kipchoge lies in wait for one of these men. And it's Shura Kitata. The time is an irrelevance, but what a win and what a way to do it. Kipchoge second, Cisse Lema third. What a race. Real heart there from Kitata. When the taller figure from Kenya went past him, you thought it was a definitive strike, but the tiny Ethiopian was not to be beaten. Second 2 years ago, it's all gold today for Kitata. On an afternoon where we've seen Eliud Kipchoge dethroned in the most spectacular fashion. We're still waiting for the Olympic champion and the world record holder to cross the line. Good run from Kipchoge, it really was, for second place, building on that momentum he displayed in Amsterdam last year. Here comes the man who has so often dominated all before him. All great champions have their off days, and today it was Eliud Kipchoge's turn to find out that it doesn't always go according to plan in the marathon. He won't make excuses. He's a man of immense courage and dignity, and we will see great days from Kipchoge again in the future. But this was the day he was to be denied. And it's Shura Kitata, the 24-year-old, who reigns supreme. Mara, I think you're almost lost for words.
I was just checking Kipchoge's CV because I was fearing that it was a personal worst for him, and outside the Olympics it was a personal worst. So I've been there before. Personal worsts are not good. So I just don't know what went wrong for Kipchoge there, but brilliant to see Kitata go one better than his second place 2 years ago, and what an amazing finish. The men's marathon here in London has seen a few sprint finishes in recent years, and to finish with a race like that, just brilliant.
Oh, and you thought that Kipchoge was going to take that with his long stride, but he went into the lead by maybe half a metre, but it was never decisive. This is good going here from Johnny Mellor. Excellent running. The 33-year-old, 10th in Berlin, just inside 2:13 a couple of years ago. On his way to securing the British title here, having already got the qualifying time for Tokyo. One of three men, but the only one competing in this race. Callum Hawkins has sat this one out. He was pre-selected after second in London, in the World Championships in London 3 years ago. Fourth place rather in London, and fourth in the sweltering conditions of Doha last year. Mellor is the third. Farah, we know, has got the qualifying time, but he's going for the 10,000 metres and a duel with Joshua Cheptegei.
Just looking back behind Mellor though, I wondered if Connor was having trouble. But they were on Birdcage Walk. They're very close to the finish, so he just needs to hold it together. So Kip Serum there, finishing in 10th place.
Well, Johnny Mellor edging towards the line on a day where we've seen Eliud Kipchoge dethroned. No fifth title in London this year for the Olympic champion. This is good work from Mellor. Very consistent. It's not going to be a personal best, but it's a good run. 14th 2 years ago, just inside 2:18. He was 18th last year with 2:13.5, and it looks like he's able to pull out a little bit of a sprint here. He's got some energy left after overcoming Ben Connor in that battle for the British title. Excellent run this, Mara. What is it? Mid 2:10s in tough conditions. This is a great performance from Mellor and a brilliant way to back up his qualification time. He's done it again.
Yeah, 2 qualifications now from Johnny Mellor. I think we'll definitely see him on the start line at Tokyo next year. Just outside his PB, PB 2:10.05, so within a minute of his PB. Great run from him.
Well, we're keeping a close eye on the clock here because it's 2:11:30 for the official nation time, and that may well secure him a place on the Canadian team for Tokyo. That's of massive significance for Woodfine, it really is.
Yeah, big PB for him. I'm just concerned what's happened to Connor, because it was, here he comes, just inside.
Well done. That is it. He's hung on brilliantly there, because look how much it took out of him. He must have known, okay, the British title is gone, but he's done it. He's put himself in the conversation, Mara, for a place on the plane to Tokyo next year with his debut. That was excellent.
That was brilliant. 2:11.18 or so. We'll bring you the official times when we have them, but he was looking fantastic with Mellor 5 minutes ago, and then suddenly something went wrong. Those dreaded jelly legs on the finish line, I think things can turn, if you hit the wall in the marathon, you can be going really well 1 minute and things can turn horribly bad very quickly, but Connor just managed to hang on and get that Olympic qualifying time.
And by the way, we didn't see him crossing the line, but it would be remiss of us not to mention what a fantastic run for the Irishman, Stephen Scullion, breaking 2:10 for the first time, 2:09.49, Olympic qualification guarantee plane to Tokyo. John Tracy will be over the moon wherever he is in Ireland watching this. The great Olympic marathon medalist from '84 and cross-country world champion. He will be elated for his countrymen there. Well done to Stephen Scullion. We've seen quite a few producing wonderful performances to just sneak home ahead of that marathon Olympic qualification time. Great performances and good strength and depth on a day that saw Eliud Kipchoge dethroned with the slowest time he's ever produced outside the Olympic marathon. It was destined to be Kitata's day, upgrading from his second place finish behind Eliud Kipchoge 2 years ago. What a win for Shura Kitata. It's not the quickest time we've seen in London, but that doesn't matter. It was a performance of real heart. Vincent Kipchumba follows up a wonderful win in Amsterdam last year with a great second place this time. Cisse Lemmer third, Geremu down in fourth after finishing second last year. But the big news, Eliud Kipchoge down in eighth, not to be today for the Olympic champion. So Bridget Kosgei was a world record holder who came here and delivered in London. Wonderful performance from her, beating her compatriot, the reigning world champion, Ruth Chetnagetich. Confirmation if you're just joining us. Kosgei took that one way outside her world record, but it doesn't matter. Sarah Hall came through brilliantly to outsprint the world champion, Ruth Chetnagetich, for second place, the first American on the podium since Dina Castor won the race back in '06, I believe. Molly Seidel with a big PB for the United States in sixth. Gerda Stein just missed the South African national record, but only by a few seconds. So a couple of minutes ago, we had the official presentation. A lovely watch, the silver dish, and a not too shabby payday either. $30,000 US for the victory. There was a bonus of 125,000 for a world record, or women's only world record. Not to be today, but an excellent victory for Kosgei nonetheless. Well, there was almost a silence of shock in the stadium when Usain Bolt finally relinquished his 100-meter title. When he got the bronze, people could hardly believe it. And although there was nobody there, had we had a crowd here with the backdrop of Buckingham Palace, I think there would also have been a stunned silence watching Eliud Kipchoge, graciously, it has to be said, coming across the line in 8th place. Every great champion has an off day. Today was Eliud Kipchoge's. Mari Yamauchi and I will be taking a short break now, but join us to complete a hat-trick of elite races. We've got the men's and women's elite wheelchair race starting in 41 minutes' time. About 40 minutes' time.
In Kenya, our diversity is our strength. And if you don't find a beautiful place in this world, then come to Kenya. In Kenya, our diversity is our strength. The world is beautiful. And if you don't find a beautiful place in this world, then come to Kenya, where you can actually experience a lot from the big five, that's the animals, one of the best wonders of the world. That's the wild beast migration and diverse cultures, peaceful environment, and actually good terrain for training and good places to relax your mind and be at peace of mind.